Welcome to question period in the Alberta Legislature. My name is David Carter. The House is comprised of 83 members who come from all parts of the province of Alberta. There are 61 government members who come from the Progressive Conservative Party. The official opposition is the New Democrats, who have 16 members in the present legislature. In addition, there are 4 sitting members from the Liberal Party and 2 from the Representative Party. The House will be sitting until probably the end of June, and the bulk of the business will be done with regard to the estimates work on the budget. The House sits Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday from 2:30 until 5:30 in the afternoon, and again from 8:30 until about 10:30 in the evening. Wednesdays, the House sits from 2:30 until 5:30, and Friday from 10 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon, and visitors are always welcome to attend.
Lord, we give thanks for the bounty of our province, our land, our resources, and our people. We pledge ourselves to act as good stewards on behalf of all Albertans. Amen.
Introduction of visitors. Presenting petitions.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to present this petition containing 37 signatures of members of the University Women of Alberta. The petition calls for public hearings on the Meech Lake Accord and expresses their general concern at a number of features that are in the Meech Lake Accord.
Reading and receiving petitions. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions. Introduction of bills.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce Bill 258, an act to amend the VENCAP Equities Alberta Act. This bill would create a subsidiary of VENCAP, which would be a seed capital firm. The purpose of this firm would be to provide funding only to small Alberta businesses and entrepreneurs.
The member for Edmonton Meadowlark has moved first reading of Bill 258, an act to amend the VENCAP Equities Alberta Act. Those willing to give consent to first reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Bill number 258, an act to amend the VENCAP Equities Alberta Act, introduced by the Honourable Member Mr. Mitchell, is now read a first time. Tabling returns and reports.
Minister of Energy.
Speaker, I'd like to table the annual report of the Department of Energy for the year ending March 31st, 1987.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to file with the Assembly 2 documents, the first being the 69th Annual Report of the Workers' Compensation Board of Alberta for the year ended December 31, 1986, as well as a discussion paper that I released last Thursday entitled Shaping the Future, a document on the Workers' Compensation Board that is being used in a public consultation process under the chairmanship of Mr. Vern Millard. Both of these documents have been provided to members, Mr. Speaker, and I file them in the Assembly now.
Minister of Recreation and Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure today to table 4 copies of the 12th Annual Report ending March 31st, 1987 for the Department of Alberta Recreation and Parks.
Introduction of special guests.
Member for Edmonton Kingsway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure today to introduce to you and to members of the Assembly 2 old friends from Sechelt, British Columbia, Tom Woods and Lois Holmes. I would ask that they rise and receive the traditional welcome of the Assembly.
Edmonton Meadowlark, followed by Calgary Glenmore, followed by Calgary Mountain View.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to introduce a group of grade 6 students from Rio Terrace School in the riding of Edmonton Meadowlark. I've had the pleasure of meeting with these students, who I found to be extremely bright and asked some of the most interesting questions that I've been asked by any group of constituents. They are joined today by Claire Desrochers, their teacher, and by two parents, Mrs. Sutton and Mrs. Gardner. I would ask that they stand in the gallery and receive the welcome of the legislature.
Calgary Glenmore.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to introduce to you, and through you, to members of the Legislative Assembly, Dr. Mo Watanabe, sitting in the members' gallery, is a Calgary Glenmore constituent. He is also the Dean of Medicine, Faculty of the University of Calgary, and the Chairman of Hospital and Health Care Utilization Committee. And I would like Dr. Watanabe to rise and receive the warm welcome from this Assembly.
Calgary Mountain View.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not often in this Assembly that I get to introduce special guests to the members, so I'm particularly pleased this afternoon to be able to introduce 30 library technology students from the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. They're seated in the members' gallery with their teacher, Mr. Borden McLeod, and I'd ask all members here to extend to them a warm welcome for coming from Calgary today.
Minister of Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to introduce a school group. It is from my constituency today. There are 27 students from grade 8 in Leduc Junior High School. They are accompanied by their teachers, Mr. Fedor and Miss Harpinko. They are seated in the members' gallery. I'd ask that they stand and receive the warm welcome from the House.
Minister of Culture and Multiculturalism.
Mr. Speaker, it is a special privilege for me today to introduce to you and through you to the members of the Assembly 5 guests to our province from China and 3 guests accompanying them. Mr. Speaker, as a result of the successful Heilongjiang art exhibit at the Provincial Museum last fall, this delegation is in Edmonton to establish an outlet here in the city for the top 13 artists from Heilongjiang. This will be the first time that the Chinese government has permitted the establishment of a retail art outlet out of the country to be owned and operated by one of their agencies. The members of the delegation, Mr. Speaker, are Mr. Lai Shanjun, head of the mission, Mr. Zhu Ming, Mrs. Yu Xiusu, interpreter, Mr. Tang Xinxiu, and Mr. Yu Ning. They are accompanied by Mr. Bob Maskell, chairman of the Edmonton Harbin Friendship Society, who is also the principal of the Victoria Composite High School, and they are also accompanied by Mr. Kim Ma and Mrs. Li Kong of the Canada-China Friendship Society. I would ask that they would rise and that receive the welcome of the Assembly.
Minister of Technology, Research, Telecommunications.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor today to introduce to you and to members of the Assembly some 27 students from grade 6 in the La Pearl School in the constituency of Edmonton-Jasper Place, along with their teacher, Mr. Harvey Thiessen, who are visiting the legislature today in the public gallery. And I would ask that they rise and receive the usual cordial welcome of the Assembly.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to direct the first question to the Minister of Social Services. Mr. Speaker, it is well known that hungry kids cannot learn. Yet in this so-called rich province, there are hundreds and perhaps thousands of kids that are hungry at school and suffer learning problems as a result. My question to the Minister, what consideration has the Minister given to establishing a provincial program for meals in the schools where needed?
Mr. Speaker, I welcome that question because it has received some attention publicly lately, and certainly appropriately so. I believe if it were a matter of speaking only to families who, for some reason or other, were not able to cope within the social allowance system, and in fact the type of review that is provided under that system were the factor that had children going to school hungry, it probably would be an easy problem to solve. But, Mr. Speaker, it is not just children whose families are a little tight on income.
Mr. Speaker, I'm well aware of that. The question is, what is the government going to do about it? Recognizing that the problem's there, whether they be working poor or whether they be on social allowance. What I'm asking about is specifically, is the government prepared to look at a program to bring lunches into the schools? That's what I want to know.
Mr. Speaker, I think that we have unequivocally indicated our support for families in this province who have no other alternative but to come to look for income support from government. And we have raised those rates. Those rates will be going up momentarily. And, Mr. Speaker, it is our belief that the income supplied or the dollars supplied for food allowance is sufficient, and that if families have a problem managing within that amount, that they should seek the counseling that's available to them.
Mr. Speaker, these are children, and they're actually hungry in this province, in this so-called rich province. Mr. Speaker, it was embarrassing at the Olympics, and one of the schools, Sports Illustrated, brought in money to do that. And that's unbelievable. My question is, has the minister then, if the provincial government unprepared to do anything, has the minister inquired of the federal government if they would involve themselves in some cost-sharing program so that we can solve this problem in Alberta?
Mr. Speaker, once again, there is basic support for families in this province. I would invite all honourable members to bring forward the names of families who are having difficulty managing on the income that's available to them, and I could assure honourable members that we would provide the counselling that would assist them in managing their income.
Mr. Speaker, we want food, not counselling. That's the point. Mr. Speaker, is the minister aware, I hope that she's aware, that the federal government will, under the Canada Assistance Plan, fund 50% of the program? It only cost us half. Is the minister prepared to look at this program and move with this with the Minister of Health and do something in this province and stop talking about counselling? We want food for those children.
Mr. Speaker, if the honourable member is suggesting that families in this province, and particularly the parents who are responsible for those families, are incapable of learning how to budget better, then I would suggest to the honourable member that he is dead wrong.
Supplementary, Edmonton Goldbar.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister, we're not talking about family budgeting here. Let's concentrate on the children. Let's stop talking about the families and support to them. Mr. Speaker, the communities are already supporting this need in large part. Will the Minister then immediately undertake and promise this House that she will convene a meeting of community groups, school boards, school personnel to find ways to work together to collaborate on a program that will feed hungry children?
Mr. Speaker, once again, it is not the view of this government that we should intervene in family situations. We should provide basic support. And the honourable members basically are talking about a universal program that will feed all children, because in order to really put forward dollars towards the children who need it, those children individually must be brought to our attention. And I would suggest to the honourable member that if she reads the Child Welfare Act, she will know that if children are not being properly cared for by their families, that she ought to bring that information forward to the minister or to the department, and we will act upon it.
Red Deer North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the minister, certainly the thought of children coming to school unfed is a very distressing one. Does the minister's department actually have the ability to get in touch with these parents and sit down with them over a period of time and work with them to help them understand how to achieve success in this particular area?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if the Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party is laughing at the suggestion that we should get in touch with parents who are having a problem feeding their children or not, but I certainly would indicate to all honourable members that the children's families, they should be identified so that we may assist those families individually.
Leader of the Opposition, second main question.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to designate my second question to the member from Edmonton Avonmore.
Thank you. To the Minister of Hospitals and Health Care, Medical Care. The Minister said yesterday to my colleague, the member for Edmonton Centre, I would ask the honourable member if he would give me one single case in this province where an individual has been refused medical services because of the inability to pay. Just one single case. Is the Minister unaware of the study, which I am now filing, prepared by the Calgary Health Services, which documented cases of women unable to access services from their physicians because of an inability to pay, and the Minister's refusal to ensure all of women's health care needs?
Mr. Speaker, I'm perfectly aware of the study, and nowhere in that study does it indicate that a particular medical doctor has refused medical treatment because of the inability of an individual to pay. As I indicated yesterday, it is unethical for a medical doctor to refuse treatment to anyone on the basis of that individual's ability to pay. And I state again to the NDP party, if they have evidence that doctors in this province are not living up to the standards of ethics that they subscribe to, then let us have that information, and I will take the opportunity to forward it to the College of Physicians and Surgeons at the earliest opportunity so that they might deal with the practitioner. In the meantime, for the opposition, Mr. Speaker, to make such unfounded accusations against the profession, I think, is inappropriate.
Mr. Speaker, the report was made by the Calgary Board of Health. I understand that the Minister is going to reinsure some sterilization procedures, but he has still refused to reinsure contraceptive counseling that should be under a separate fee code so that it can be obtained honestly. Is the Minister suggesting that women be forced to obtain contraceptive counseling they need under false pretenses? That is, that they should obtain this counseling from the doctor under the guise of going for help for a hangnail?
Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the Minister of Community Occupational Health, and my colleague, the Minister responsible for women's issues, did announce this morning that we've made a decision to reinsure tubal ligations, vasectomies, and IUD insertions and follow-up visits. We also announced some other initiatives by the Minister of Community Occupational Health in the area of providing contraceptive information and birth control counseling for women. In addition to that, I indicated again, as I've done several times in this legislature, that the health care insurance plan fee code schedule does indeed provide a lot of opportunities for women and men both to access contraceptive counseling advice from medical doctors under a variety of fee schedules. And there is no need whatsoever for an individual to lie about the reasons why they're visiting the doctor. That kind of information ought to be provided as a general matter of course throughout the course of visits during pregnancies, general checkups and annual checkups, and at other times when people are visiting their medical doctor. It's interesting to note, Mr. Speaker, that some...
Honourable Minister, perhaps the answer's gone full term. Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I would hope the Minister would allow for people to go to their... Does the Minister not recognize that the choice of contraception must be made in the context of a woman's medical history, and that even if a woman receives contraceptive counseling at a health unit, she must still see the doctor for birth control pills?
That is all very, very recognizable, and it's perfectly appropriate for a doctor during the course of other examinations, and indeed a responsibility for the medical doctor to provide that kind of information. Frankly, Mr. Speaker, I don't understand what the concern is all about. Contraceptive counseling as an individual fee schedule item is not provided anywhere else in Canada. It's expected doctors will provide that as a matter of routine during the course of all kinds of other examinations and checkups.
Mr. Speaker, does the Minister not recognize that obtaining birth control pills and fitting diaphragms are part of the same package of medically required contraceptive care as sterilization, and that by refusing to reinsure all these services, he is limiting access to the contraceptive care of their choice.
Well, the member is absolutely wrong, and I was aware of that information before I even got this job.
Thank you. Edmonton Gold Bar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister, we're pleased that he has reinstated insurance in those particular services. Will he now undertake to reinstate fully the insurance services to people for chiropractic, physiotherapy, optometry? These are the services that keep people active and working in our communities.
Well, Mr. Speaker, first of all, members will recall that last year we were faced with a very difficult budget year and had to try to do some things to make sure that our health care insurance plan wasn't rising at the rate it had been over the last several years, and we made a number of moves. With respect to the provision of eye examinations and physiotherapy and chiropractic and podiatry coverage, we did not eliminate that altogether. In fact, what we did was we reduced the amount that's paid by the health care insurance plan somewhat. We then, in the case of eye examinations, ensured that children and seniors were still covered for a standard eye examination, and all kinds of other eye problems are still, of course, covered under the health care insurance plan by the services of ophthalmologists. So we haven't taken any of those services completely out of the health care insurance plan. All of those things are obviously under examination from time to time. As I've indicated earlier in the House, the time frame at which we might make any changes relating to areas where there is an annual limit available to each individual or family, or a one-time annual visit, is July 1, because the health care insurance program runs from July 1 to July 1, and it's very difficult to make any changes mid-year and have the insurance plan be able to keep track of what people have received. So any changes there wouldn't come till July 1.
Member for Calgary Northwest.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Health. I'm appalled that the members opposite and health units and certain other groups have continued to confuse this whole issue on contraceptive counseling. Contraceptive counseling is a medical procedure that's always been available, and it really confuses the public. Would the Minister once more tell the public of this province that contraceptive counseling has always been available, as is counseling for diabetes and hypertension, under the traditional fees?
With Mr. Speaker, with the honourable member's kind assistance, I think we've just done that again.
Main question, Leader of the Liberals.
Mr. Speaker, back to the Premier on the question of loan guarantees. In May of 1987, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Ronald Blake, Assistant Deputy Minister of the Economic Development in Alberta, told the House of Commons Committee that all loan guarantees are sent to the Provincial Cabinet Priorities Committee, then to the Treasury Department for final approval. Also, Mr. Speaker, every Albertan, you want to wait till you're fully briefed by the Treasurer? Also, Mr. Speaker, every Albertan that was ever borrowed money from a bank knows it's really almost impossible to do it without a personal loan guarantee. Very simple to the Premier. Has the government got Mr. Pocklington's personal guarantee for the guarantee that they issued him last month?
Mr. Speaker, I'd ask the Honourable Provincial Treasurer to respond to the member.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said in the House before, with respect to anything we've done with the Pocklington Group, the Gainers, or the Palm Dairy Group, we have taken full personal covenants wherever possible and have, in a very detailed and complex fashion, established a master agreement setting out the terms, setting out the kinds of guarantees and the kinds of assets which are pledged. It is my understanding that all loans, personal guarantees have been given.
Mr. Speaker, I think the gentleman should table it. He said his understanding was that. All right, let's go further then to the Premier again. Has the government got the backers, the secret backers of the Alberta newsprint, or the Cezerny Group, whatever you want to call them, personal guarantee for the $200 million guarantee that the government put up there?
Mr. Speaker, we have already said that in matters of this kind of a transaction between someone who's trying to develop and trying to invest in this province, we'll take whatever cautions we can to ensure that the government's guarantee is well protected. Speaker, since there has been several questions raised with respect to guarantees, I should say the following. First of all, with respect to the Alberta newsprint, I would not be prepared to talk further about the kind of arrangement that's been put in place. But what might be helpful, Mr. Speaker, to the legislature is simply to run through a series of checks that we look to when we establish a guarantee. In that context, Mr. Speaker, I think it's important to note that last Friday, the Conference Board of Canada indicated that Alberta be one of the fastest growing provinces in Canada as a result of the kinds of investments taking place in this province. Yes, Mr. Speaker, as I've indicated, we get personal guarantees wherever possible. The point is, however, that the use of guarantees is an important initiative to develop the comparative advantage that we have in this province, and that's essentially what this province has been doing. Simply to run through some of the items, Mr. Speaker, so I can help the member, because I know it's a difficult issue for him to deal with. Yes, personal guarantees are always taken where possible, Mr. Speaker. We do the following. First of all, we ensure that we have a good asset to begin with, that the project itself is viable, that has the ability to repay the debt, and at the same time, Mr. Speaker, we limit the amount of our loan usually to a targeted amount or to some specific asset which can be secured under the provisions of the guarantee.
Thank you, Honourable Provincial Treasurer. Perhaps we'll leave some room for supplementaries.
Mr. Speaker, then, obviously no guarantees. What has the government done in the case of the Cezerny Group, for instance, to ensure that they just will not flip the deal to some multinational for a big profit and walk off?
First, Mr. Speaker, throughout the questioning both today and yesterday has been continuing reference to the Cezerny Group. Let it be clear that it's my understanding Mr. Cezerny was only acting as an agent for the investors in that company, was not in fact a participant in the investment of this newsprint, this very valuable newsprint project which is going ahead in this province. Let me go on to say, Mr. Speaker, that while you may ask a specific question about the form in which the guarantee is placed, the point I was trying to make, sir, was that when we do a guarantee, we factor the guarantee based on the project itself, the kind of assistance that the province can provide, and we do have a set of criteria which we obviously check off before the guarantee is given, including such things as, and as these questions have been raised before, the transferability of the guarantee, for example, requires Alberta approval. There's a fee for the guarantee, as the Premier has pointed out before. There's a reduction in the guarantee based on the reduction of the debt. There are all these conditions put in place to secure fully and wherever possible that the government's assets are secured by our guarantee. It's a very, very difficult and very precise process, Mr. Speaker. The general prospect, the general nature of the program, Mr. Speaker, is such that it has to be patterned to fit the project itself. But we do have a checklist. It's very carefully scrutinized by members of this government, and it's working, Mr. Speaker. The investment is coming back to this province, and that's what's significant.
Mr. Speaker, the final question. Obviously, the checklist, the first thing was required, Mr. Speaker, is a blue and orange membership card in the Tory party. Can the share ownership of either the Cezerny or Pocklington deals be changed without the permission of this provincial government?
Mr. Speaker, I don't know of any Japanese group, for example, in the case of the Oshawa Group, that have membership of the PC party. That's a red herring, Mr. Speaker, and he knows full well it's a red herring. We look at this in the intention of the investor. We look at those people who bring money to this province to generate jobs, to generate new activity. They're the people who get the acceptance. They're the risk takers, and they're the ones who are welcome in this province, Mr. Speaker.
Edmonton Strathcona.
What grounds does the Treasurer have for believing that Mr. Pocklington's credit is pledged only to the Treasury?
Again, Mr. Speaker, with respect to the Pocklington guarantee, it is unfortunate we're dealing so precisely with respect to one investor's credential. We have, wherever possible, Mr. Speaker, made available all information that's available to us. I've indicated before that the transaction with respect to the loans were done on a commercially a confidential basis. With respect to our guarantee, Mr. Speaker, it is a guarantee which is covered by a master agreement And that master agreement was drafted by members of the same profession, the member across the way. Presumably it must have some efficacy, and it's tested all the various assets which were involved in this particular group of companies. We've taken full guarantees, we've taken full position, we've taken full mortgage position. It's been done by members of the law profession. I have every reason to believe it's soundly done, and it's done to protect the interests of this province, and it's done to encourage development of this province, and that's what's happening.
Member for Stoney. Speaker, would the provincial treasurer please confirm that when a loan guarantee is granted for a fee, that if the risks of the business are properly assessed, that there may be no outlay to the Alberta taxpayer?
As a matter of fact, that's probably, on balance, a fair assessment, Mr. Speaker, and it should be noted that for these guarantees, we collect revenue. And we use our borrowing power right now to ensure that the cost of money going to these important projects is financed at the very best rate. What we don't do, Mr. Speaker, is allow the person who's using our guarantee to shop the guarantee, so to speak, to take it and shop it around the world for a specific pledge. What we do, however, is judge where the loan is going to be made, who the provider of the money will be, and then we provide the guarantee based on our assessment of the creditworthiness and obviously to earn a return to this province.
Chair would like to direct some late-hour reading. Member for Westlock Sturgeon and certain other members of the House to look up Beauchesne 359, subsection 7, plus another reference in 360. The Chair is a bit concerned about some of these questions that are arising, or comments. The question must adhere to the proprieties of the House in terms of inferences, imputing motives, or casting aspersions upon persons within the House or out of it, especially members outside of the House who have no opportunity to defend themselves or their reputations. Also, with regard to Beauchesne 360, a question may not seek information about matters which are of their nature secret, such as decisions or proceedings of the Cabinet. Chair just respectfully brings it to the attention of the House to give some consideration to it. Member for Little Bow.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Associate Minister of Agriculture, and it follows my questions raised yesterday. The Minister indicated in her remarks that she was looking at alternatives relative to the crisis that's faced by a number of young farmers in this province. My question to the Minister, Mr. Speaker, is would the Minister be prepared to implement a short-term hold policy on foreclosures and quitclaims until the government announces this new policy that's in the works at the present time?
Mr. Speaker, there are very few foreclosure actions in process at this time, and a quitclaim is an agreement between the borrower and the lender to eliminate the debt and the equity that's involved. So the quitclaim is an agreement between the two parties, and I certainly won't put a hold on any quitclaims at this point in time, because people phone my office and say, for goodness sakes, have ADC make a decision on my quitclaim application. And so to put a hold on them on a unilateral basis would be detrimental, I think, to some lenders in the province, or borrowers in the province.
Mr. Speaker, supplementary question to the Minister, and the Minister could outline some of those conditions where certain quitclaims could have conditions as to where, upon the request of one party, the quitclaim could proceed. But new policy will affect the outcome of those quitclaims, Mr. Speaker. My question to the Minister is with regards to land sales that are in process, and tomorrow bids are coming in on a number of parcels of land to AADC, and also next week a number of bids are coming in. Would the Minister be prepared to hold any decisions on those bids until new policy is announced by the government?
Mr. Speaker, if bids are coming in on land at this point in time, I know that it will take some time to process those bids and look at them, open them, evaluate them. And so I would not expect bids to be in advance of some of the decisions that we're making. On the other hand, in yesterday's question period, the member from Little Bow said people in southern Alberta are now working the fields and going to plant in the next 10 days. And it would be totally unfair to a bidder who has made an offer on ADC land to hold up that bid because of new policies which we might be bringing in, when he eliminates his opportunity to plant a crop this year. And because of the drought or the dry conditions in southern Alberta, it's very important to get that crop in early, and the member well knows it.
Mr. Speaker, supplementary question to the Minister of Agriculture. It's totally unfair maybe to the purchaser, but it's equally unfair to the young farmer that's getting kicked off the land when the man purchases the property. Equally unfair, and the minister should consider that. Is the minister ready to reconsider the question I raised yesterday with regards to a lease back to some of these young farmers on either a 1-year, 3-year, or 5-year basis, or convenient basis, as may be determined by the minister?
In the first place, Mr. Speaker, the land that would have been tendered is already owned by ADC. So that land is in place now. In terms of looking at a 5-year lease on ADC quit-claimed property, that's a major decision, Mr. Speaker, because we have to be fair to all of the people who may want to look at the rental of that land, not only the person that has been on it, but some others. And I certainly have great empathy for the people who may have got themselves into financial difficulty and for the problems that they have. And I can assure the member from Little Bow that we will work with every borrower to try to resolve that problem if there is a solution.
Mr. Speaker, supplementary question to the minister, to the associate minister. Yes, the ADC does own the land. Young farmers want to lease it back and stay on the land. They're there today. My question to the minister is with regards to the objective of the government in terms of forced exits or in terms of bankruptcies, foreclosures, quitclaims, and the policy thereon. In 83, there were 300.
Respect, honourable member, the supplementary is getting very long. Can we have the question, please?
Number of forced exits in the province of Alberta will be over 800 this coming year. I'd like to ask the minister, what is the level of forced exits that is acceptable to the minister that is used in government policy planning in terms of the future of agriculture in this province?
I don't think any level of forced exit is probably desirable. And a lot of those exits are decisions that are made by the farmers themselves. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, that there's approximately 800 exits from agriculture every year in the province of Alberta. There's also a number of entrants into agriculture every year in Alberta. You have to remember that 14 farmers out of 100 borrow from ADC, and of those 14 farmers, 2 are under serious financial difficulties. On the other hand, we have 3,109 accounts in ADC which have prepayments and totaling over $5 million.
Member for Athabasca-Lac-La Biche, supplementary.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, to the Associate Minister of Agriculture, why is the minister pushing quitclaims on farmers, which results in an average loss of about $120,000 to the Alberta taxpayers, rather than creating a debt set-aside program and eventually recover all the monies owing when the agricultural industry recovers?
Mr. Speaker, the member from Athabasca is totally incorrect. I am not pushing quit claims on anyone. The decision for a beginning farmer or any farmer for that matter to quit claim is usually made when both the borrower and the lender come to the conclusion that there is no other alternative in terms of meeting the debt obligation. And I am at all times looking at other ways of dealing with the financial difficulty. One of the things that I think we have to take a serious look at is the effect of the commodity prices on their ability to pay. And I think that's paramount. I think it's a valid consideration, and I'm certainly willing to look at any aspect of that area which may make it more easy to meet the debt obligation in the long term.
Member for Stettler, followed by the member for Westlock Sturgeon on supplementaries.
Mr. Speaker, to the minister, I wonder if the minister could describe, for the benefit of the House and in the interests of the painful process of farm exit, what the process of proportional quitclaim does to minimize those occurrences.
Mr. Speaker, we've introduced a proportional quitclaim as one of the options that ADC has available to them in order to work with a young farmer to reduce the debt obligations by taking the amount of the loan that he has, the amount of arrears and the amount of equity, and proportionally reducing the debt, at the same time proportionally reducing the equity which he has, but in some cases allowing him to remain in agriculture. At the same time, one of the options there, of course, is to allow for a year of leasing with an opportunity to renew the lease, providing the workout plan shows that he's satisfied that he can do it, and ADC is also satisfied that there is some possibility of restructuring the loan.
Final supplementary on this topic, Westlock Sturgeon.
Mr. Speaker, sounds like Charles Dickens. Not enough food for the children. Kick you off the land if you can't make your mortgage.
Honourable member, I'm sorry, it's a supplementary question.
Mr. Speaker, question to the Associate Minister of Agriculture is with respect to the process of quit claiming, putting land up for sale, and then closing the deal. Would she not go this, or would the minister not go at least this far, that the original owner of the land has a chance to match the price for which the land is sold for? Because often, this land is turned back over to a new buyer for a lot less than what they were willing to settle with the original owner to keep them on the land.
Mr. Speaker, the member raises a question that causes me great consternation, both in terms of thinking of the young farmer who has had the land, who I have great empathy for, and in terms of thinking of the farmers who did not, for some reason, qualify for ADC loans. I'd like to read one sentence from a letter I received last week. Anytime land came up for sale, I could not even think of buying it because these farmers would pay any price to acquire it to get more land. They used their sons and ADC money. So in dealing with land, we have to be very, very careful that whatever position we take not only is fair, but appears to be fair to all taxpayers.
Member for Edmonton Centre, followed by the member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Back to the Minister of Hospitals and Medical Care. Now that he's seen the errors of his de-insurance experiments with respect to contraception, he must also acknowledge that de-insuring eye exams for those who are 19 to 64 years of age last year was a very regressive step as well. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in the throne speech, it says, over the next year, my government is committed to substantially increasing efforts to prevent disease and to promote health. and eye exams by optometrists can clearly provide for the detection and prevention of eye disease, poor vision in the workplace, high blood pressure and diabetes, and so on. Will the Minister of Hospitals and Medical Care now reinsure basic eye exams by optometrists for those people who are 19 to 64 years of age?
Mr. Speaker, I just answered that question earlier in the question period.
No, he didn't.
Well, we are forever in hope on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. Does the minister therefore not agree that it's not only bad preventive health policy, but it's also a false economy to de-insure the services of optometrists, but force patients 19 to 64 years of age to see a GP who then bills the plan, and then refer to an ophthalmologist who then sees the patient, so you get two billings to ensure that there's safe eye care instead of this service that was provided by one single optometrist?
The honourable member is misinformed on two different issues, Mr. Speaker. First of all, again, it is an unethical practice for a general practitioner to refer a patient to an ophthalmologist for a standard eye examination if that's all that's required under the guise of some other medical problem. The general practitioner refers a patient to an ophthalmologist for a standard eye examination. The ophthalmologist charges the patient the full amount of the eye examination, just as an optometrist would. It's also inappropriate for the honourable member to suggest that everyone should have an annual eye examination between 18 and 65. Medical evidence, and there's lots of it to support the fact that there's absolutely no necessity for the average individual to have an eye examination other than about every 3 years.
Well, it's a debatable point, but not in rural Alberta, Mr. Speaker. Is the minister therefore saying that he will fund for rural Albertans who don't have access to ophthalmologists in many towns of rural Alberta? Will he fund the cost of their travel to see the ophthalmologist when they're referred to by GP to have to come to the city, when in fact they're bypassing a local optometrist who could provide the same service, for heaven's sakes?
Well, again, the honourable member doesn't understand the work that is done by optometrists and ophthalmologists. There's a considerable amount of medical care handled by ophthalmologists that's referred to them by general practitioners that involves other than standard eye examinations. And it's always been the case that we've been short of ophthalmologists in areas particularly outside of the cities of Edmonton and Calgary. Nothing we've done in the health care insurance plan changes that at all, but we're hopeful of getting additional professionals out into other communities, particularly with our agreement to pay part of their malpractice insurance premiums and those sorts of things. But as far as a general practitioner referring an individual from rural Alberta to an ophthalmologist is concerned, they would only do that for a standard eye examination, in which case the individual could go to an optometrist, or in the case of more serious eye problems, they would refer the individual to an ophthalmologist who may be in Edmonton or Calgary or some other city, and a health care insurance plan would pay the bill. But not if it's just a standard eye examination.
Will the minister try to put an end to the confusion that exists, not only in his own mind, but in the mind of the Optometrists Association, as they've met with the former Minister of Hospitals and Medicare and the Premier, and are quite discontent with the current arrangement, are forcing to direct bill the people under 19, over 60, waiting to meet with them and finally come to some cogent agreement arrangement with the Optometrists Association and put this matter to rest as it should be under a health promotion effort.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that the public is confused about the current position of the government with regard to this matter. I think it's only the honourable member that's confused, and I have no way of dealing with his confusion.
To Edmonton Gold Bar, supplementary.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. The minister's already said July 1st is the deadline. Will he then undertake to meet with them before then and find out what in fact is happening? Meet with the optometrists. Ask them what's going on out there.
Mr. Speaker, I have met with Dr. Graham Dottie, the president of the Optometrists Association, who comes from Bonnyville, on several occasions to discuss the concerns which have been expressed by the members of the optometry profession. I expect to be talking to him again in the near future about the issues, and there certainly isn't any lack of communication between his office and mine.
Member for Edmonton Strathcona, followed by the member for Edmonton Highlands.
My question is to the Attorney General. Mr. Speaker, in a recent case in Edmonton, some people charged with assault and obstruction of the police themselves complained that the police had assaulted them, and there was an investigation of it in the usual way in the department, the police department. The supposedly neutral investigator of this complaint thereafter assisted the prosecutor in the prosecution of the case against the complainants. Is this consistent with departmental policy?
Mr. Speaker, I didn't quite catch the question, and I really don't want to deprive the honourable member of his supplementary, but I didn't quite get the one point he made in his comment. So,
till the honourable minister sits down. But now that that's occurred, you are now recognized. Please rephrase the question. Thank you.
I'll be glad to help the Attorney General. I'm sorry if I was not clear. The investigator in the police department investigated the complaint in accordance with the procedure under the Police Act. Supposedly neutral investigator, of course. That investigator then assisted the prosecutor from the Attorney General's department in the prosecution of the case against the complainants. That is a no-no, I would have thought. My question is whether this is consistent policy.
Surely. I would have to take that question as notice, and I would appreciate the honourable member perhaps giving me some more particulars of the issue. I'm not familiar with the particular case.
I'd be glad to do that. In the same case, perhaps this will jog our memory, in the same case, the departmental prosecutor did not disclose to the defense the names of a considerable number of witnesses he knew of, but was not proposing to call and did not call. Is that consistent with departmental policy?
Well, once again, Mr. Speaker, I would have to have more particulars, and I would have to take the question as notice. I'm not familiar with every case that's prosecuted in the province in all its details, and I would seek the assistance of the honourable member in coming to grips with some of the particulars that he has in mind and trying to seek advice on this matter.
I'd be glad to do that, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps I could try the Solicitor General there. And this matter, Mr. Speaker, was only the latest in a series of worrying events that suggest that all isn't well, at some levels at any rate, of the City of Edmonton Police Department. What grounds does the Solicitor General have for believing that the Edmonton Police Commission, who is charged, of course, with the duty of policing Edmonton satisfactorily, is in fact discharging that duty?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as the Honourable Member for Strathcona points out, the jurisdiction or authority for the policing of Edmonton is under the Edmonton Police Commission. I have been in contact with the Commission as well as our Law Enforcement Division of Solicitor General. We feel that the incidents that have come to fore lately are unrelated and just by coincidence happen to come together at one time. We feel in our investigation that the citizens of Edmonton are getting adequate policing, therefore does not necessitate the intervention of the Solicitor General's Department. If further investigation determined that wasn't the case, we would look for their request for our intervention. I might point out that if a citizen and or police officer feels that they have been wronged, there is a procedure set out in the Police Act whereby they can complain to the Chief of Police. He will investigate. If they're not happy with the disposition, the complainant then has the opportunity to appeal to the Law Enforcement Appeal Board, which is chaired by a Justice of the Queen's Bench as well as two private citizens.
Final supplementary, Mr. Speaker. Even so, Mr. Speaker, in view of the number, variety and gravity of the charges simultaneously pending against different Edmonton policeman, what consideration has the Solicitor General given to exercising his powers under Section 33 of the Police Act to have the matter looked into either by the Law Enforcement Appeal Board or otherwise?
Time for question period has expired. May we have unanimous consent to finish this series of questions? Opposed? Carried. Solicitor General.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member, I think, has pointed out himself, it's the variety and gravity of the offences. And if you look at the 7 offences, other than the fact that they are criminal offences or alleged criminal offences, there is no other common thread. And because of that, I do not think, and nor do the experts in my department or the Police Commission, think that there is a large-scale problem with the quality of policing that the citizens of Edmonton are obtaining. I might further point out that if the Commission feels that there is something wrong with their policing department, they have the right to initiate the action.
The supplementary question, Calgary Buffalo.
In light of the series of problems, I wonder whether the minister would acknowledge the need for some independent input in the system of investigating complaints against police and implement a system which has some of the merits of the new systems implemented by the RCMP and by the City of Toronto in recent years.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member may recall Bill 16 that was tabled in the House last session did point out some improvements to the present system. And without being anticipatory, he may look forward to tabling of the Police Act again this session.
Thank you. Minister of Social Services wishes to supplement answers given earlier in this question period.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Important information came to my attention, and I thought it was appropriate to discuss this very important issue in the legislature by supplementing the information. And the official opposition has provided a background paper as of this date to do with school children and a lunch program. Mr. Speaker, what I wanted to observe for all honourable members in the House who are very concerned about potentially hungry children is that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition and his party has made several references to the excuses which he says one indication of the government's commitment to social justice is the lameness of its excuses, and has listed thus and so. Mr. Speaker, the heading of the excuses cites a quotation by myself which is accurate and goes on under the same heading with only one quotation mark to go on and cite other statements which are not government nor my own. And if you were as innovative in helping children and suggesting that parents access help from government and other counseling places, you would be helping children.
You may make excuses or not. I was asking a specific question, and I ask that question again. What are you prepared to do to help hungry children in the schools? Is it nothing other than give lectures to parents about what a bad job they're doing?
Mr. Speaker, obviously government members are prepared to do what the official opposition is not prepared to do, and that is assist parents in being good parents and exercising their responsibility.
Orders of the day.